change bodies, of course, too. So it's not just our sense of self, this sort of inner narrative thing, but our bodies literally change, especially with illness, um, and aging in general, just over time, period. We don't have to pathologize it at all. So our bodies change, and a lot of, especially the ideas of sexuality that we pick up in social in society, through advertisements on billboards, etc. It's a very narrow definition of sexuality. It's a very narrow idea of what constitutes sexy. But suffice it to say that you won't find many folks who are dealing with chronic illness or disability in these sort of in the big tableau of what's considered sexy out there, which is really a shame. It's very common. There's a lot to talk about this. I just want to note it here. But those of us who have been dealing with disability, it's gotten better. But I hear stories from my mother and others back in the day that are just remarkable. And I've seen it too, which is basically that doctors will often presume that as a disabled person or someone who's sick, that therefore, of course, you're not having sex. I mean, look at you, essentially. So it happens all the time. People don't ask in the history. Doctors don't ask about your sex life if you're disabled. They presume you don't have one. My mom, I hope I don't out you here, Mom. By the way, my parents are probably on here. Yes, we're talking about sex, and my parents are in here. But they wouldn't even, they would just glance over a pap smear because they just presumed as a younger woman that she wasn't sexually active, or they'd have gynecological tables, exam tables where she couldn't get in. So there's all sorts of ways that medically and societally we narrow this idea of what constitutes sexy, and we exclude a zillion people from that definition. And it's such a shame. We undermine each other this way all the time. But what we're left with, of course, is we may feel ashamed of our bodies as they change. They may, never mind what's going on externally, we may not feel sexy. It may have nothing to do with advertisements on TV. I just may not feel sexy if my body's in pain, if my body is sort of unappealing to me, it doesn't look like it used to or like I want it to. And so much of sex has to do with desire, etc. So this can't be, we can't talk about this slide enough. This is this is a big piece of the picture. And so both sides so far are demanding of us that we have as much more fluid, nimble idea of what constitutes sex or sexy or sexuality.